Hey Virgo, something is moving toward you, not slowly, not with the careful, measured pace of something that's still deciding whether to arrive, with a kind of momentum that suggests a decision has already been made somewhere in the interior of another person. In the quiet hours when honesty becomes harder to avoid than to face, and what you may be about to feel is the arrival of that decision breaking through the surface of the ordinary. There's a particular energy in this reading that feels urgent in the most tender sense of that word. Not alarming, not destabilizing, but insistent, like something that has been waiting for the right moment and may have finally decided that the right moment is now, that the cost of waiting any longer exceeds whatever fear has been keeping it in place, that you deserve to know something that someone has been carrying in the most private part of themselves, perhaps for longer than either of you has fully reckoned with. And before we go any further into what may be coming, I want you to take a breath, because what follows may stir something in you, may reach into a part of you that doesn't always get addressed directly, may brush up against something you've been carrying quietly, a hope, a longing, a particular softness you've learned to keep tucked away because the world doesn't always make it feel safe to leave it exposed. That part of you is allowed to be here right now. Let's begin with what it may feel like on their side of this, because that's where this story starts, not with the arrival, but with the long, complicated, privately exhausting experience of carrying something significant for someone and not yet having found the moment, the words, the courage to let it be known. There's a weight to that, a very specific weight. It shows up in the way a person edits themselves in your presence, in the extra half second before they respond to something you've said, not because they're uninterested, but because they're managing something, measuring how much of what they feel is safe to let into the room at any given moment, navigating the narrow space between authentic and exposed, between present and revealed. You may have noticed something like that, a quality in how this person holds themselves around you that's slightly different from how they hold themselves around others. A warmth that seems to have a direction to it aimed specifically and consistently at you. An attentiveness that goes beyond what politeness or friendship would require. A way of being near you that carries beneath its surface something that hasn't been named yet, but that the body, yours and theirs, may have already been communicating in the language that exists below words. Love, before it's spoken, tends to live in exactly that register. In the unremarkable moments, in the way someone passes you something without being asked because they noticed you needed it, in the way they remember without effort, without any apparent strategy, the small details of your experience that most people let fall away, in the way their mood seems subtly, almost imperceptibly, connected to yours, lifted when you're well, quieter when you're struggling, present in a way that tracks you without surveillance, that simply, naturally gravitates. There's a moment that may be approaching in which all of that subterranean language finally finds its way into actual words. And I want to talk about what it may have taken to get to that moment, because it rarely arrives without a journey, rarely surfaces without having been pushed back down multiple times, considered approached, retreated from, reconsidered in the quiet of a night that offered too much space for honesty. This person may have rehearsed this, not in a calculated way, but in the way people rehearse things that matter, turning them over in the mind, trying different arrangements of words, imagining possible responses, feeling the vulnerability of the thing they're about to offer, and needing to sit with that vulnerability long enough to decide it's worth the risk. Because it is a risk. To say I love you in whatever form that takes, whatever specific words carry that weight when it finally arrives, is to make yourself permanently visible in a way that cannot be undone. You can't unsay it. You can't retrieve it once it's in the air between two people. All you can do is offer it and then stand in the openness of having offered it, waiting to see what the other person chooses to do with something that is, in that moment, the most honest thing you've said in a long time. That takes something, and whatever has been building in this person, whatever has finally tipped the balance from not yet to now, it may have required a kind of interior reckoning that isn't visible from the outside, a confrontation with their own fear, a decision to value honesty over safety, a recognition that the cost of continued silence had finally exceeded the cost of being seen. What may have changed recently to bring this to the surface now? Something often shifts before a significant admission, a circumstance that created urgency where there wasn't any before, a conversation that accidentally revealed more than was intended and made retreat feel less possible, a moment of unexpected closeness, brief, unplanned, almost accidental, that clarified something for them in a way that all the careful thinking hadn't managed to do. Or perhaps simply time, the accumulation of enough ordinary moments, enough small exchanges, enough quiet evidence of what you are to each other, even without the declaration, that silence began to feel not like protection, but like a deprivation, like withholding something from both of you that neither of you had formally agreed to go without. There may also be something about proximity, a sense that circumstances might be shifting, that the particular window of access they have to your life might not remain indefinitely open, that the version of things where you're available to receive this, where the possibility of it still exists in its current form, might have an edge to it that they hadn't fully felt before. And that edge, however it arrived, whatever created it, may be part of what's generating the momentum you may be about to feel. Something may now feel more important than later. And later may no longer feel like a safe place to keep putting this. Now let's turn toward you. Because the arrival of something like this, the approach of someone's true feeling, moving fast and with intention in your direction, doesn't land in a vacuum. It lands in the specific interior of a specific person who has their own history with love, their own accumulated experience of what it's meant in practice to be loved, or to wait for love, or to extend love towards someone who wasn't ready to receive it, or to protect themselves carefully and for good reason from the particular exposure that comes with being fully, specifically, unmistakably wanted. You have a history with all of that, and that history may shape in ways both conscious and not how you receive what's coming, whether some part of you braces for it rather than opens to it, whether the feeling of being chosen by someone, genuinely and specifically chosen, produces warmth, or produces a kind of anxiety that wears warmth's clothing until you're alone enough to feel what it actually is. There's no wrong response to this. Whatever rises in you when it arrives, joy, fear, confusion, the complicated mixture of wanting something and suddenly not knowing what to do with it, now that it's within reach, all of it is information, all of it is honest, and all of it deserves to be felt without being immediately managed into something more presentable. Let's talk about what true love, as distinct from the other varieties, tends to feel like when it's actually present. Not the version that arrives with intensity and then requires you to shrink to maintain it. Not the version that loves a performance of you, the curated, composed, most palatable version, while remaining indifferent or confused by the parts of you that don't fit that image. Not the love that asks you to be grateful for being chosen while quietly teaching you to feel lucky rather than worthy. Something different. Something that, when it's real, tends to have a quality of ease underneath the intensity. A quality of recognition, the feeling of being seen accurately, specifically, without the distortion of projection or wishful interpretation. The feeling that this person knows something true about you. Not everything, never everything, but something essential, and that what they're offering is directed at that true thing rather than at a more convenient version of it. That kind of love tends to feel at its core like being met, like arriving somewhere rather than performing for someone, like exhaling rather than holding your breath, like the particular relief of being in the presence of someone with whom the maintenance required by ordinary social existence drops slightly, where you are simply, without effort, enough. Does that quality exist with this person? When you're near them, is there something that relaxes in you that tends to remain tensed around others? A part of you that comes forward more readily, more naturally, without the usual negotiation between what you feel and what you show? A sense that your specific way of being in the world, your particular humor, your particular darkness, your particular way of caring about things is not just tolerated, but actually received, actually welcomed. If something in you just quietly answered yes, then what may be approaching you isn't just someone's feeling. It may be the recognition of something that's been quietly true between you for longer than either of you has officially acknowledged. A mutual current that may have been running beneath the surface of your connection, felt by both sides, named by neither, waiting for exactly this kind of moment to finally be brought into the light. There's something about the speed of this that feels worth addressing. Fast, in the context of love, doesn't always mean careless, doesn't always mean impulsive or unexamined or liable to dissipate as quickly as it arrived. Sometimes fast means that a decision was reached after a long, private, largely invisible process of consideration, and that once the decision was made, delay stopped serving any purpose. The speed may be the speed of someone who has already done the slow part, who has already sat with the uncertainty, weighed the risk, considered what they stand to lose and what they stand to lose by staying silent, and arrived at some quiet, private moment at the clarity that only comes after all the alternatives have been genuinely considered and found wanting. That kind of clarity tends to move with a particular quality of purpose. It doesn't second guess itself at every step. It doesn't require external validation or the right circumstances or a feeling of perfect readiness. It simply moves because the decision behind it is already settled, and what remains is only the execution of something already known. You may be about to feel that kind of purpose aimed in your direction. And when it arrives, in whatever form it takes, and whatever words carry the weight of what this person has been holding, the invitation is to let yourself actually feel the significance of it, not to deflect it with humor or minimize it with qualification or immediately begin processing it from a safe analytical distance, just to let it arrive, to let it be what it is. What might this change? That's worth sitting with, not anxiously, but with genuine curiosity, because something named is different from something unnamed, even when the underlying reality hasn't changed. The act of saying it, of putting it into the air between two people in the irreversible form of actual words, changes the texture of the space between you, creates a new context in which everything that came before can be reread, and everything that comes after will be different for having this moment as its foundation. It may create a decision you haven't had to make until now, not an impossible one, not necessarily a complicated one, but a real one, requiring your honest engagement rather than the comfortable ambiguity that unnamed feelings allow. Because unnamed feelings can coexist with almost any arrangement of circumstances. They don't demand anything. They don't require you to know what you want or to say what you feel or to choose one version of the future over another. But named ones are different. Named ones live in the world in a way that asks something in return, not immediately, not with pressure or expectation, but simply as an honest thing that has been placed before you with the quiet dignity of something that deserves an honest response in kind. And your honest response, whatever it is, whatever it looks like when you stop managing it and let it be what it actually is, may be more available to you than you currently think. There are things you may want to consider before this arrives, not as preparation in the strategic sense, not as a way of rehearsing the right reaction or deciding in advance what you're going to say, but as a kind of inner clearing, a making of space inside yourself for something real to land in. What have you been afraid to want? In the specific context of this person, in the specific texture of what exists between you, what is it that you've been keeping slightly out of reach of your own honest acknowledgement? What possibility have you been carefully not quite looking at? Because looking at it fully would require you to feel something that then might not have anywhere to go. That thing, whatever it is, may suddenly have somewhere to go. And there may be a version of you waiting just beneath the careful management of your current interior that has known for a while exactly what it wanted and has simply been waiting for the external situation to catch up with what was already internally true. This may be that catching up. This may be the moment where what was already true between you felt, sensed, circled around, carefully, not named, finally finds the form that lets it be lived rather than just quietly held. As this comes to its close, here is what the energy of this reading seems most insistent about leaving with you. You are someone worth the courage it takes to say I love you to. That may sound simple. It may even sound obvious, but there's a difference between knowing something intellectually and feeling it as actually concretely true about your own life in this specific moment. And the feeling of it, the genuine, embodied sense that someone has looked at you specifically and honestly and found something worth the risk of full exposure, is not something everyone carries with ease. You may have complicated feelings about being loved, about receiving it, about trusting it, about whether what's being offered is really what it appears to be, or whether there's some condition attached that hasn't revealed itself yet, some version of the story that will eventually fold back on itself and leave you in a familiar difficulty. Those feelings are understandable. They come from somewhere real, and they don't have to be fully resolved before you're allowed to receive what's coming. You don't have to be healed of your skepticism before love is permitted to reach you. You just have to be willing, in whatever small, tentative, imperfect way is available to you right now, to stay open long enough for something real to make its case, to let it arrive without immediately dismantling it, to give it and yourself the chance to find out what it actually is when it's allowed to exist in the light rather than in the careful dark of the unnamed. Someone may be about to offer you exactly that chance, moving fast, with intention, with something they've been holding for longer than you may know. And you may be more ready to receive it than you feel. Let yourself be found, not by just anyone, by this person in this moment. Whatever rises in you when it arrives, let it be honest, because honest is the only thing worth offering back to something this real.